At 6:50 a.m. on April 3rd, 2025, deputies from the Washoe County Sheriff's Office were sent to a house on Crystal Canyon Boulevard in Cold Springs, Nevada, for a report of a little girl who wasn't breathing, had no pulse, and was cold to the touch. When first responders went upstairs, they found 5-year-old Izabella lying in a bedroom next to a tiny crib-sized mattress on the floor with no bed frame. They started life-saving measures, but it was already too late. Izabella was pronounced dead at 7:22 a.m.
Welcome to Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide. We're Kai's AI co-hosts, jumping in with your midweek mini. Don't forget that this podcast is completely listener-funded. If you want more cases, early listens, and bonus episodes you won't hear anywhere else, join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/loveandmurder. I actually just put out a bonus of a man who is accused of secretly administering abortion medication to his pregnant girlfriend, leading to a miscarriage. If you want to hear this case and more past bonuses, join the Lamb Fam at the $5 tier or above. Patreon.com/loveandmurder. Now let's get back to your midweek mini.
It didn't take long for deputies to realize this wasn't a medical emergency. It was a crime scene. They saw a lot of signs of trauma. Izabella had oral trauma and heavy bruising on her face, pelvis, hips, the insides of her biceps, and on her genitals. There were multiple bruises, cuts, scabs, and scrapes across her arms, legs, torso, and face. On her face alone, they counted more than 10 visible injuries. A black eye on one side, a gash over the other. This wasn't a child who fell once. This was a child who had been hurt over and over. The adults in the house were 35-year-old Nicholas Loving and his wife, Andrea. They lived there with Izabella and her 2 sisters. It didn't take them long to find out this wasn't Nicholas's first time being accused of hurting a child. Back in 2014, he'd been charged in a different case involving his then-girlfriend's 2-year-old son. That case wasn't some minor thing either. He was charged with 2 counts of child abuse and 1 count of domestic battery. He eventually pleaded guilty to 1 count of child abuse, causing substantial bodily harm, the exact same charge he was initially facing now in connection with Izabella. In that 2014 case, Nicholas admitted that he bit the little boy on the right shoulder because he thought the child was too rambunctious after a bath. The bite left a distinct teeth mark on the boy's shoulder. He also admitted that he pulled the child up by the arm, which most likely caused a spiral fracture. He told police that he, quote, did not mean to harm the child, but agreed the child had the broken arm because he lost his temper. Judge Elliot Sattler sentenced him to a suspended prison sentence of up to 96 months and 60 months of probation. Because Nicholas stayed out of trouble on paper, he never served time in prison for that conviction. Andrea was already in his life back then. She was dating Nicholas during that 2014 case. Now, years later, they had 3 little girls together in this Cold Springs home, Izabella and her 2 sisters. When deputies started asking questions about Izabella's condition and the obvious old and new injuries, Nicholas and Andrea made sure to mention that there had recently been a Child Protective Services case involving the family, but told officers that CPS had closed it. They were worried, even in that moment, that police might call CPS again. As detectives dug in, they learned that in the days before she died, Izabella had been seriously sick. She had been sick for about 9 to 10 days, coughing up mucus and blood. When police asked why they hadn't taken her to a doctor, Nicholas and Andrea said that they were worried the doctors would see her injuries. They also claimed somehow that they'd been advised not to seek medical attention until their child had been sick for at least 12 days. So, according to them, they were just following that advice. The picture of Izabella's daily life started to come into focus through their statements and what deputies saw in the house. In the girls' bedroom, right next to that tiny mattress on the floor, there was a small 5 by 5 foot cubby space. Nicholas admitted they used that cubby as a kind of confinement area and said Izabella was sometimes put in there as punishment. He admitted to locking her in there once, but tried to push more of the responsibility onto Andrea, saying she was the one who mostly put Izabella in the cubby. Meanwhile, her sisters slept comfortably on a nice queen-sized bed in the same room. Andrea started to give more details about what life in that house really looked like for Izabella. She told detectives she had recently seen Nicholas kick Izabella in the genitals, and she saw him drag Izabella by the collar or by the hood of her sweatshirt up the stairs. 5 days before Izabella died, Andrea said she heard Nicholas screaming and then heard a thud that sounded like a child being thrown. She didn't have to see it to know what was happening. The night before Izabella was found dead, things escalated. According to Nicholas, on the night of March 2nd, and yes, there's a date discrepancy here with the April 3rd death, Izabella told him she was cold and didn't feel well. He said he took her temperature and claimed it was only 96 or 97 degrees. Instead of calling a doctor, he put her in the bath and later put her to bed somewhere between 7 and 8 p.m. Around midnight, one of the other girls woke Andrea and Nicholas up and told them Izabella was throwing up. They went to check on her, decided she was okay, and all went back to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, Nicholas said he checked on her again. What he eventually admitted to police was that he and Andrea actually discovered Izabella not breathing at 2 a.m. on April 3rd. But no one called 911 until almost 7 a.m. That's a 5-hour gap. Nicholas first told detectives that the delay happened because he was consoling Andrea, saying she was panicking and he needed to calm her down. But as they kept talking, another version came out. Andrea told detectives Nicholas wouldn't let her call 911 at 2 a.m. She said he told her he wanted to bury Izabella in the backyard and then run to his parents' house in Virginia. Andrea said she was against it because the body would rot. According to her, they spent that time arguing and talking about what to do, not trying to save their daughter. Eventually, they gave up on the backyard burial idea and decided on a different plan: staging. According to the affidavit, they decided to, quote, remove Izabella from the cubby, drag her and her bed across the room and stage it there, so that the scene would match the story they were going to tell, that they had found her around 7 a.m. and called for help right away. Later, when Nicholas was re-interviewed and realized how bad that 5-hour delay looked, he tried to blame it on Andrea. He told detectives that running was actually her idea and tried to minimize his role in the planning. When detectives pressed him on the obvious injuries all over Izabella's body, Nicholas gave a long list of explanations. He denied ever hitting, spanking, shoving, or kicking her. He said he was hardly ever home because he was working. According to him, Izabella was just constantly falling. He said she fell down the stairs. He described 2 separate incidents where she supposedly fell out of his Ford pickup truck. About one of those accidents, which he said happened a week and a half before her death, he gave 2 completely different stories. In one, she hit her face on the asphalt. In the other, she put her hands down and broke her fall without hitting her face. He said her black eye came from being hit in the face with a plastic baseball bat by someone else. Maybe one of her sisters. To explain away the repeated bruising, he told investigators they had planned to take Izabella to a specialist in June to figure out why she was falling so much. Andrea's statements didn't match his. She had already told detectives she saw him kicking Izabella, dragging her upstairs, and that she heard the thud of her being thrown. Nicholas also had abrasions on his hands and fingers when detectives saw him. He blamed those on work too. Izabella's sisters were interviewed separately. They told detectives they were woken up around midnight, taken downstairs, and told by Nicholas that Izabella had died and that they might be going on a trip. So, while their 5-year-old sister lay upstairs, they weren't being told to say goodbye. They were being prepared to disappear. Andrea eventually summed it up in one sentence.
I should go to jail for not helping her, and Nick should go to jail for killing her.
Deputies secured the house immediately, and by the afternoon of April 3rd, 2025, detectives had enough to take Nicholas into custody. His first charge was child abuse, resulting in substantial bodily harm. He was booked into the Washoe County Detention Facility. This was before the medical examiner had even finished the autopsy, because the visible injuries alone were enough to show Izabella had been hurt repeatedly and violently. On April 9th, he had his first court appearance. Judge Kendra Birchie set his bail at $10 million cash only. She told the court that Nevada law didn't allow her to hold him without bail on the charge he was facing at that moment, but she made it very clear she understood exactly how dangerous he was. If Nicholas somehow posted that bail, the conditions included home confinement, an ankle monitor, no contact with Andrea, and absolutely no contact with his children. All 3 girls were placed in CPS custody immediately. Nicholas was supposed to appear virtually for the hearing, but he never showed up on the screen. While the court system moved through the first set of charges, detectives kept working the case. They interviewed the family again, went through digital records, reviewed the condition of the home, and waited for the medical examiner's findings. Those findings turned everything. On July 30th, 2025, the Washoe County Medical Examiner's Office officially ruled Izabella's death a homicide. The final medical cause was bacterial pneumonia, but the examiner reported that multiple blunt force injuries, malnutrition, dehydration, and medical neglect significantly contributed to her death. In other words, the abuse she suffered made her so weak and so compromised that the pneumonia became fatal. She didn't just get sick and die. Her body had been broken down over time. Once that homicide ruling came in, the charges changed. On August 6th, Nicholas was booked on a new charge, open murder, and District Attorney Chris Hicks announced that his office would be filing a formal charge of first-degree murder against him that same week. Andrea wasn't spared either. Around July 28th, 2025, she was charged with child abuse or neglect with substantial bodily harm. Her bail hearing was held on August 5th. Judge Birchie set her bail at $2 million, also with no 10% option. If she posted it, she would be on home confinement with GPS monitoring, supervised by the Department of Alternative Sentencing, and forbidden from having contact with Nicholas or her children unless CPS approved it. Andrea's next court dates were set for August 12th for a motion hearing and August 14th for a status conference. While both parents sat in the legal system trying to explain away a dead 5-year-old, D.A. Hicks made it clear what direction the investigation was going. He said his office and the Washoe County Sheriff's Office were working closely to build a strong, evidence-based case. He emphasized that justice for Izzy remains our highest priority, and that his team would methodically review the evidence and ensure all legally viable charges are pursued. He also made a general point that initial charges often get amended after forensic findings come in, which was exactly what happened here. On the other side, you could see the defense strategies forming even before formal motions were filed. For Nicholas, the pattern was obvious. Deny every injury, blame every bruise on a fall, point fingers at Andrea whenever possible, and keep repeating that he was almost never home. And the trauma extended far beyond just the physical evidence. When Sheriff Darren Balaam spoke publicly about Izabella's death, he said the case deeply affected not only our community, but also our dispatchers, the deputies responding, investigators, crime scene investigators. He said he made a personal commitment that they would labor relentlessly to investigate this case and work tirelessly to be the voice for and bring justice to Izzy. And he finished with something that applies to every child abuse case we've ever seen.
If you see something, say something.
By August 2025, that was where things stood. Nicholas facing first-degree murder, Andrea facing child abuse, resulting in substantial bodily harm, and no trial or sentencing yet because the case was still active. The rest would be up to the courts, the evidence, the autopsy, the witness statements, the timeline, the 5-hour delay, and the overwhelming proof that this little girl had been living in pain long before she died. The community rallied in the only way they could. Pink ribbons went up all over Cold Springs, and people held a candlelight vigil. Neighbors, strangers, deputies, and families who had never met Izabella showed up anyway, because they wanted someone to show up for her now, even if the people who were supposed to protect her never did. Izabella was 5. She was sick, hurting, frightened, and trapped. And she deserved better than the people who were raising her.
And that's all we have for this midweek mini. What did you think of this case? Let us know. We always want to hear your thoughts. If you want more information or to get episodes you won't hear on the main feed, join us over on Patreon. Patreon.com/loveandmurder. Every tier helps support the show, helps us stay listener-funded, and gives you access to bonus content, early listens, and more. Just head over to patreon.com/loveandmurder. Thanks for listening, thanks for supporting our podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.